So now, again, my name is Gwen Sorley. My background is in education, and I started using play attention with my clients back in 1996. So I've been using play attention with my clients for about 30 years now, and I've used it with every age from 5 years old all the way up through adulthood. So hopefully, my experiences using play attention and neurocognitive training will help you get a better understanding of the program and our process. So, as we're getting started, I look at a lot of the people who are in today's list. Many of you, I notice or recognize your name from last week's webinar, our ADHD IQ webinar that many of you attended. And we talked about some of the myths and the realities of ADHD. So, I see a lot of you were at that webinar. If you didn't see that webinar, you can type in webinar and I'll make certain that you do receive the recording because I think a lot of people got a lot of information out of that webinar that they were wondering about ADHD. So I'd be happy to share that recording with you. Also, many of you have been to other webinars where we talk about different areas of executive function. And, when we discuss executive function and ADHD, we're often talking about tips and strategies. We talk about the topic, but we also get into tips and strategies that you can use to help improve time management and what else have we worked on? Organization, emotion regulation, rejection sensitive dysphoria. We've done a lot of different webinars throughout the years, and we always provide those tips and strategies, something that you can take away from that webinar. And we want you to have the tips and strategies. Those are important to have in your toolbox. But at the end of the day, we have to get to the root cause so that all of those tips and strategies can work for you. I'll give you an example of why this is important, and I bet many of you can really relate to this. I was speaking to one woman, and she has ADHD, and she said, everyone keeps telling me, just write a to do list. And she said, I can write a to-do list. That's not the challenge I have. The challenge is that I start every single day with a to-do list and I have lots of different things on that list, but at the end of the day, I don't get anything done on that list. So I can create the to-do list, but I'm not able to get anything done. Can any of you relate to that? Have you tried tips and strategies? You can raise your hand or type in the chat box, share what you've tried in the past. Yeah, a lot of you are raising your hands and it can be frustrating sometimes because you hear about all these tips and strategies. You go to YouTube and TikTok, and they tell you all these strategies you should be implementing. And you think, why are these strategies working for everyone else and not for me or not for my child or my clients? And that is because there are a lot of cognitive skills that are typically very challenging for individuals with ADHD. And we need to look at improving those areas so that all the strategies make sense and can work for you. Because it's not just a to do list, right? In order to execute that to do list, first we have to improve your memory so that you remember you have a to do list. Then we have to work on your ability to sustain your attention so that when you start number one, you're able to sustain your attention to completion so that you can then move on to number two. We also want to look at impulse control so that you're not just starting with number one and impulsively jumping down to number three. We also work on filtering distractions so that when you are working on those different items, you're not distracted by the laundry in the corner of the room or the dishes you think that should be done or that report that's due for work. You're not distracted by all of those outside or environmental distractions. We also have to work on being present and staying in that present moment. So there are so many different cognitive skills we need to improve in order for those strategies to make sense. And that's what we focus on and play attention. And many of you may be gearing up and getting ready for the new school year, and you're thinking, we have to look at that 504 that my child has in place. Do any of you have 504s in place for your child, or you're trying to get some 504s in place? You can raise your hand or let me know what type. Okay, so many of you do have a 504 in place. And as you know, if you're a parent here and you have a 504, it's a list of accommodations, right? And again, accommodations are good. We want the accommodations to be there, but we have to simultaneously develop skills because from my experience, when I was in the classroom setting, we would make accommodations, and one of the most common was to give longer test time. In theory, that is good. However, if we're not simultaneously helping that individual improve their ability to sustain their attention so that when they're working on the test, they're able to sustain their attention to that test until completion. We're not working on filtering distractions, if we're not working on processing speed so that they can process and take what information is on in their head and get it down on paper, if we're not working on impulse control so they're not just rushing through the test just to get it done, we have to work on all of those skills simultaneously so that longer test time is really productive time and it's not just more time to daydream or be off task. So I hope that makes sense. It's really important. We have the accommodations, we have the strategies in place, but we also have to simultaneously develop skills. Stacy says, "What is a 504?" I'm in the United States. So, Stacy, a 504 is a an accommodations that they can make within the school setting for individuals who may not um, have any support with the special ed department, so they don't get an individualized education plan. If your child does get special or is able to get support services through special education, then they may have an individual education plan. That's an IEP. What we work on in order to help individuals with, for example, ADHD, many of those individuals will not get an IEP. So the next best thing to request is a 504, and that's for what they consider other health impaired. And whereas the IEP is very specific and it has specific goals and benchmarks, the 504 will at least provide your child with some accommodations, like I mentioned, the longer test time or a set of books for home and for the classroom. So there are a lot of different accommodations they can do, preferential seating. So if you haven't looked into that, Stacy, with your school, that might be something that you look into. Because again, we want those accommodations, but we also have to simultaneously develop skills. So that's what we focus on within Play Attention. We specialize in one thing, and that is to help you reach your goals. So you're all here today because you have a goal in mind. Maybe you have a couple of goals. Go ahead and type in the chat box. What are your goals? Why are you here? Are you a parent and you want to help your child improve executive function or to be able to actually show everyone what they know? You may have a very bright child, but they're struggling academically, or maybe they're struggling socially and you want to help improve those peer relationships. Are you an adult and you are struggling with productivity, or maybe that job promotion is eluding you, not because you're not qualified for that job promotion, but because some of these skills are just holding you back and you're not able to get those promotions. Maybe you're a professional and you want to further help your clients develop these areas. So a lot of you are typing in your goals, and thanks for that. I'm going to share some of them. Efren says, I am a parent and want ideas to help my child. Kat says, strategies to support executive function. Uh, Krishna says, parent who wants to help my child. Armin says that he is diagnosed ADHD, but his child is also ADHD and they're searching for help. Marie is a professional working on executive function training with her clients, wants more assistance in this area. So you can see there are a lot of different individuals here, and you're looking at it personally or professionally. Larissa wants to help her child and herself. And I think what Larissa brought up, and another individual here that I read just a short while ago, You're looking at this for yourself and also for your child. And I think that's really important to keep in mind that we don't know what causes ADHD or an attention difficulty, but it does seem to run in many families. So it is very rare that we only work with one family member. Typically, we are working with at least one parent, at least one child, if not the entire family. So if you're looking at play attention for home use, because we do have that home system available and then also the professional. But if you're looking at it for home use, keep in mind we can customize a plan for every individual in the family. And if you're here as a professional, that's also important to keep in mind because when I was working privately, I often would work with multiple family members. Hester says, I am a teacher at a private school where we have a lot of different students with different accommodations. Also, a parent with a child that has ADHD. Need more tools to implement daily for everyone to work and come into contact with that may need similar tool sets. Excellent. Very good. So thank you everyone for sharing. Corey says, want to help my kid improve his executive function, focus, emotion regulation, and impulse control. Corey, you bring up a lot of hot topics, and we are going to address all of those. But I really appreciate what you're saying there because what makes us unique and effective is what we teach and how we teach it. We were the pioneers in neurocognitive training. It was actually our founder, Peter Freer, who started researching different attention training techniques back in the 1980s. And what he came across was the work that Dr. Pope and Dr. Paulson were doing with NASA. And he found that NASA was incorporating feedback technology with their simulator training. So that means when they were doing their job, when their pilots and astronauts were doing that flight simulator training, they were monitoring the brain states of those individuals. And if the pilot or the astronaut was very attentive, they were in the zone, then all of their controls in the simulator were automatic. It was very easy for them to do their job. But if they became distracted or if they were anxious or stressed, they weren't as attentive, then everything became very sluggish. All of the controls were manual and it became harder for them to do their job. So what they were doing was they were giving that real-time feedback while doing job training to make maximum use of that time and really developing their pilots and astronauts' ability to stay in the zone, to stay in that peak attentive state while doing their job. And our founder thought, well, that's brilliant. If I can show my clients their attention in real time while we're working on all of the skills they need every single day, that is an effective program. And that is the very foundation of play attention. So, what we do is we integrate that feedback technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping to provide you with the most comprehensive approach available. So, many of you may have actually seen our body wave armband on our website. This is it. I'm going to share it with you here so you can see it up close. This is our body wave armband. On the back, there are 3 sensors. And when I slide this armband on my arm, now those sensors are monitoring my brain activity that tells us how attentive I am. And then that information is given over to the computer where I'm allowed to control all of the cognitive exercises just with my mind, or more specifically, my attention alone. And I receive constant and immediate feedback as to whether or not I truly am focused and paying attention. So just like those pilots and astronauts at NASA were receiving that real-time feedback while doing their job training, we're providing you with real-time feedback while doing cognitive skill training and behavior shaping. So why is that important? Well, if you think about attention, attention's so abstract, isn't it? So if you think about when you look at your child or your client or your partner, or maybe this happens to you as well. If you look at those individuals and you say, I need you to pay attention. Please, I need you to pay attention. What do they typically say back to you? Go ahead and type in what is the typical response you get back when you say, I need you to pay attention. I want to see what you're hearing and see if it's the same that I was hearing. All right. Many of you are hearing the same thing I was hearing. Vanita, Robin, Mark, Lucas, Janelle, Trey, Bethany, you're all saying, I am paying attention. And, that's the typical response. And usually they really do think that they're paying attention. They just haven't developed what it takes for them personally. So, what we're doing is we're taking this very abstract concept of attention and making it concrete and controllable. So now you actually see your attention, you feel what you're doing, and you're allowed to practice not only just attention, but all of these other cognitive skills that we mentioned earlier, and we're going to touch on the different cognitive areas we can address, but all these cognitive skills that, again, may be challenging, but required for strong executive function. So this means all of our cognitive exercises are brain enabled. You have to be paying attention in order to activate the activity. If you're not paying attention, then the activity will stop or the character will go in the wrong direction, and you have to focus back in order to continue. So no longer are we saying, pay attention, I need you to pay attention, right? Because that's how we typically try to teach attention. We say, sit still, pay attention, eyes on me. We try to lecture you and tell you how to do it. But now we're providing you or your child or your clients an experience where you see your attention, you feel what you're doing, and you're allowed to practice it. And we know this is critical because when we talk about improving attention or strengthening executive function, we're really talking about sparking brain change. And brain change doesn't just occur. There are very specific catalysts that need to be in place that are required to spark that brain change. So, one is attention. And we just talked about how we are incorporating that attention into the process. So, remember, I have that body wave armband on that's monitoring my attentive state, my brain activity that tells us how attentive I am. And that is really critical for to spark that brain change because you can have a great teacher. You can have a great counselor. You could have a fantastic life coach. But if you're having a hard time paying attention to that individual or the process, then it's hard to get maximum benefit. So that's why we make certain that no matter what you're working on, you are actively engaged. So there we take care of that first catalyst required for brain change. Now we also incorporate challenge because we know if you come into a learning situation and you are 100% successful, and let's be honest, all of us would love to be 100% successful, right? That would make us very happy, but it's not going to challenge you. It's not going to spark any brain change because you've already mastered it. There's no reason to spark brain change if you've mastered the area already. So we have to provide challenge. So within our program, we have what's called an auto adjust algorithm. And that means when you put that body wave armband on, we're looking at your best ability to pay attention. And the bar is set there. If you're able to reach or exceed that level of attention, then you can activate the exercise. If you are able to maintain that level of attention, now we have to challenge you. So in the background, we raise the bar just a little bit. Now you have to be that much more attentive in order to be successful. The opposite is true too. If you start getting fatigued or you're not able to gain that level of attention that you initially were able to reach, then we bring you back down to the last successful level and gradually build you up. So that's important to keep in mind too, because I know some of you are thinking, but my child's already frustrated at school or at home, or I get easily frustrated. And so we want to make certain that we're not frustrating you, but we are keeping you at a challenge. So we keep it at that challenging yet success-based pace. That is the best spot for brain change and learning. Now, we also incorporate deliberate practice. So remember, 3 catalysts required for brain change: attention, challenge, and now deliberate practice. Because we don't want you to come into a session and just go through the motions, right? That's like if you go out on the golf course and you think you're going to get better at golf by just hitting a bucket of balls randomly, hit with no goals in mind. So we have to have specific goals. So when you log into your session, Sheer Genius, our artificial intelligence, is going to set a mini goal for each exercise based on your previous performance. So you log in, Sheer Genius will say, okay, yesterday, Robin, you completed attention stamina with 70% attention. Today, let's try 72%. And if you do that, you earn a point, and the point goes into your reward system. So you see how all of these catalysts are critical components to spark that brain change, and they're all incorporated within play attention. Now, we've been doing this integration that I've been referring to, the integration of feedback technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping for about 30 years. But Tufts University School of Medicine wanted to know, is that integration important? Or can we just simply give you a series of cognitive exercises, or what you hear a lot about as brain games or brain training apps, and get the same results? So they had three different groups of individuals, all identified as ADHD. The first group received play attention. So they had the full integration, just like NASA integrated, right? We had that full integration. The second group received just cognitive exercises. So brain games, brain training apps, no feedback technology, no behavior shaping. And the third was their control, and they received no intervention at all. And at the end of the study, the play attention individuals were the only group that showed global improvements. So that's important to keep in mind. Global improvements means we're not just looking, did they get better in the exercises, right? Tuss was looking at, did they transfer and generalize these skills into other areas of their lives? And they showed global improvements in all areas, including academic, social, behavioral, and executive function. They also noticed that if the individual was on medication, because some of them were on medication, some of them were not, but if they were on medication and in the play attention group, those individuals had an average decrease in their medication, where the other two groups had an average increase. And that goes back to skill building. If we can teach you the skills, then there may be less of a necessity to mask symptoms. So we didn't really talk about that as of yet, but I know some of you had that question. You can use play attention whether you're on medication, not on medication. Either way is fine. Medication works for a lot of people by controlling symptoms. The challenge is it doesn't teach any skills or change behaviors. So we don't want to medicate and fail to educate. We want to use this time to help you develop the skills. And that's what play attention can do. It can teach the skills that medication alone cannot teach. So let's go ahead. I really want you to experience what I'm talking about. I want you to see that real-time feedback. So I'm going to demonstrate, I'm going to switch my screens and demonstrate play attention for you. But before we do that, I want to ask a quick question. So I'm going to put up my poll because um, before I can show you how play attention works, I need to know that you've all been paying attention, you've been actively engaged, and you know what this body wave armband monitors. And you should be able to see the poll on your screen right now so you can plug in your answer. If you can't see it, you can just go ahead and type in your answer in the chat box. What does that body wave armband monitor? Is it A, eye movement, B, breathing, C, brain activity, or D, FM radio? Is it eye movement, breathing, brain activity, or FM radio? Go ahead and type in your response or plug it in on that poll that you see on your screen. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so 87% of you answered correctly. So this is really important for you to listen to very closely because this is the core of play attention and why it's so effective. That body wave armband is monitoring brain activity, indicative of how attentive you are. So it is not monitoring eye movement. It is not monitoring breathing. Because if you think about what attention is where, I should say, where does attention begin? Sorry about that. Attention originates in the brain. So if we're going to show you your actual attention in real time, we have to show you your brain state. So that is what the body wave armband is listening for. It's listening for that moment when all of those neural networks are working together and you give off that very specific signal that tells us how attentive you are. And then that information is given over to the computer so that you're allowed to control all of the cognitive exercises just with your mind alone. And you get real time feedback regarding your attention. Does your breathing help with that? Yes, but that is not what we are monitoring. All right, I hope that clears up if any of you had questions on that. So we are monitoring your actual brain activity that tells us how attentive you are. So let's go ahead and look at play attention in action. I'm going to go ahead and share this with you here. Let me switch my screen here. Okay. All right, I have gone ahead and I've switched my sharing here. So hopefully you should be able to see the play attention interface in the background. Could you just type yes or do a thumbs up if you do? Zoom has changed a few little things today on me. So just verify that you do see all of the different cognitive exercises if you would. Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. Excellent. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you one of these exercises, but you see here, there are lots of different cognitive exercises on the screen. And as you review these, keep in mind that you will not need all of them. That's where the customization comes in. What is important to remember is that no matter what you're working on, whether it's attention stamina or task completion or working memory, remember you have to be paying attention. Again, if you're not paying attention, the activity will stop or the character will go in the wrong direction. So when you start play attention, you're actually assigned a focus coach, one of our coaches here on staff. And that individual is going to learn a little bit more about your specific needs so we can customize the plan. And then once we customize your profile, you'll have access to the different cognitive areas that are most important for you. So let's go ahead and I want to share with you attention stamina. So attention stamina, our goal here is teach you how to direct and sustain your attention to low stimuli at will, much like being able to pay attention to the teacher in the classroom or your colleagues in the workplace. So now remember, I have the body wave armband on that's monitoring my brain activity, and I can choose from different characters, but one is this diver. When I click play, and before I click play, I want to mention to you that I can't see your questions while I'm demonstrating this. So you can keep your questions coming, but I will have to circle back around after the demonstration to answer your questions. So I'm going to go ahead and click play. And once I click play, you're going to see a transition screen. So in a moment, you're going to see your game is loading. And this is just simply helping me transition from our conversation into the actual exercise itself. Once we get started, I'm going to turn down my volume just a little bit so that you can hear me and you're not distracted by that noise. Now you see my characters at the top of the screen and my attention here is white because I'm not paying attention. I'm distracted. I'm talking to you. So now I'm going to stop our conversation. I'm going to pay attention to my task at hand. Once I'm paying attention, you're going to see that I'm able to swim that character all the way down to the bottom of the ocean just with my mind alone, just with my attention. If I get distracted, then he's going to start to float out. And then I know I have to control and focus back in. So I'm going to stop our conversation, focus in. Now that's as low as he goes right there. Notice what happens as soon as I get distracted. Immediately he starts to float up because I'm no longer as attentive. And distraction can be a variety of things. It could be daydreaming, it could be anxiety, it could be someone walking into the room and I can't filter that noise. Whatever it may be, immediately I get that feedback. Now I know I have to control that behavior, control that daydreaming, focus back in. So you see, it's kind of like a piece of exercise equipment for the brain. We're working areas that right now are challenging for you. And when we can provide you with that constant and immediate feedback regarding your attention, you're then able to develop the self regulation and self monitoring you need in order to recognize when you're paying attention, recognize when you're not paying attention, and more importantly, when you're not, you'll know how to correct it because we've given you an opportunity to actually practice it. So, really empowering and really important to provide you with that experience. Now, you'll notice a couple of things. One, our graphics. That's about as exciting as our graphics get. All of our graphics are very simple, they are very low stimuli because we know if we give you something high stimuli or high interest, you can probably hyper focus in those situations, right? Where it's hard to draw you away from it. So we don't need to teach how to pay attention to high stimuli or high interest. You've got that. What we need to teach is what's more challenging. And that's how to pay attention to low stimuli, much like the classroom teacher or the workplace where we cannot possibly compete. So that's why everything's presented very simply so that you can learn how to pay attention to that stimuli at will. Now, notice all of my data is stored for me. So you see here that I worked for a minute and 45 seconds. Of that time, I was actually paying attention 27% of the time. And my recovery speed, which was from the time I lost my attention to the time I regained it, was right around 25 seconds. So now Sheer Genius, the artificial intelligence, is not only going to use this information to document my progress, but also use that information to start setting those mini goals that we talked about. Remember the deliberate practice where Sheer Genius, the next time I log in, will say, okay, yesterday you completed this with 27% attention. Today, let's try 29%. And if you do that, you earn a point. The point goes into your reward system. So documenting progress, setting that deliberate practice model, and then you'll notice there is a skill advancement. So there's bronze, silver, and gold medal. So there are certain benchmarks you need to reach before we move you to intermediate and then to advanced. And when we move you up, we're going to tie in more processes required for executive function, such as processing speed, impulse control, distractors, and mental flexibility. So it gets a little bit more complex. There are times where you're going to have to respond using the mouse or the keyboard, but you're still driving everything with your attention. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you understood how I was actually controlling that. And now I'm going to switch back to our presentation here. And like I said, please do keep your questions coming. All right. That says, what's in the chest on the floor of the ocean? So you were looking at the little distractions we have in the background there. So that's a good question. So when you noticed, if I was able to maintain my attention and stay down towards the bottom of the ocean, the very bottom, Cat, then a coin would appear. And that would have just been a little bit more added incentive or added reinforcement, I should say, to doing a good job. Good question. All right. There was also another question. Kat also asked, um, how can it monitor brain activity? So, Kat, let's think about you're asking about that body wave armband and how it monitors brain activity. So, if we think about what attention is, right now you have billions of neurons firing in your brain at different times. But when all of those neurons fire in synchrony, meaning they all fire at one time, you give off a very specific electromagnetic signal. And that signal is what we know of as attention. So that's what that body wave armband is listening for. It's listening for that moment when you give off that very specific signal. And then that is communicated. Now, I'm sure many of you are used to seeing, when we talk about monitoring brain activity, you usually see sticky pads or ear clips or a headband. And that makes sense to you, right? Because you it's close to the source, and that's why everyone uses something on the head, because that signal you emit, it's so small, it's so minute, that it's easiest to monitor if you're close to the source, which of course is the head. The challenge with that is that no one wants to wear something on their head. It's uncomfortable, it's invasive. A lot of our clients who have ADHD or autism, they also have sensory challenges, so that is not ideal. So what we had to do is advance that technology, because just because you move further away from the source, that signal doesn't disappear. It just gets harder to tune into. So what we have to do is amplify that signal, and then we have to filter out heart rate, muscle, blood flow, all that noise that occurs from the head to wherever you placed it on the arm. So it just makes it much easier to use. Remember, that signal runs along the peripheral nervous system. So we are able to pick up that signal even though we're further from the source. Okay. All right. So a couple of good questions have come in. Laura says, can you talk a little bit more about translating into improved executive function? And absolutely, Laura, we are going to get to that, because that is our end goal, is to develop these foundational skills in order to improve executive function. And Cheryl asks a great question as well. Can it train you to relax in order to focus and help with performance anxiety? Absolutely, Cheryl. And there are a couple of ways I would recommend you do that. And one, of course, is just simply developing overall executive function and that cognitive control so that you can help with that anxiety. But also, we have a mindfulness application as one of the cognitive skills you can incorporate into your program. And that is one that I really strongly recommend for a lot of our clients who have lots of anxiety or that internal dialogue that tends to derail you, because that teaches you how to stay in the present moment. And that's really important, because we hear so much, and you see here one of the cognitive exercises right there, Cheryl, is the mindfulness app that you see there. And you hear so much about how mindfulness helps with the symptoms of ADHD and anxiety. And that's true. However, we can't look at someone with ADHD or anxiety and say, now I want you to practice mindfulness, because mindfulness is hard. It's hard for all of us, but especially if you have that running mind. So, what we do is we give you a visual representation so that you can actually learn what it means to pay attention. So in one of our exercises, lotus, which is incorporated into play attention, you'll have a lotus flower in the middle of the screen. Once you have your mind in the present moment, you're able to start opening that petal on the flower. If, Cheryl, you start thinking, when's my next appointment? Who do I have to call? I don't think I'm going to do well on this exam. If you start thinking in that internal dialogue, that petal is going to start to close, because you're no longer in the present moment and you have to bring yourself back. So it's a really powerful way to develop that ability to stay present. And that is an important point too, because we have lots of other mindfulness applications available. And some of you may have seen we are starting a mindfulness coffee talk starting next week on Tuesday and Wednesday. It will run for 2 weeks. And during those, Tuesday and Thursdays starting next week. And they're going to just be mini meetings, 20 minutes apiece, to talk about different areas of mindfulness and calm. If you want to register for that and you have not yet, just type in mindfulness and I'll make certain you get that registration. So again, you saw all of those different cognitive exercises. And to Laura's point, the reason we work on all of those different cognitive exercises is because those are the foundational skills required for strong executive function. And many of you here today are very familiar with executive function and what that is. But if you are not as familiar, you can think of it as kind of like the CEO of your brain. It's what allows you to control your attention, your behaviors, your emotions. It allows you to plan and prioritize, organize, avoid procrastination, and remain on task. So it's a set of mental processes that allow us to get things done every single day. And these processes, none of us are born with strong executive function, but we all have the potential to develop it. And that development starts right after birth and continues through our mid to late 20s. Unfortunately, we expect everyone to have strong executive function by the time they hit middle school. And that development doesn't always naturally happen. And there are a lot of factors that can inhibit that development, one of which is ADHD. It can be ADHD, it can be anxiety, autism, traumatic brain injury, dementia. It can be a variety of issues. Oftentimes, it's a combination of factors that negatively affect executive function. And so it's important what we keep in mind through neuroplasticity that the brain is moldable, it's shapeable. And if we provide you with that right challenge and the right feedback, you can create these new neural pathways despite your current wiring. We know age is not a factor. We also know like that labels like ADHD are not a factor. If we provide you the right challenge and feedback, you can create these new neural pathways. So when you look at all of these different mental processes, these are the areas that are our end goal. So I think it was Corey brought up emotion regulation was one area of concern. And so you can think about emotion regulation because you didn't see that on my screen, right? And when I showed you play attention, it's one mental process within executive function. But in order to improve emotion regulation, there are a variety of skills that are required because I am sure Corey has taught her child how to use strategies. You've talked about strategies, you've talked about tips. What should you do when you get into this situation? How should you respond? And in the heat of the moment, those strategies are not utilized. And you may see this in yourself or your clients as well, where you know what you should have done after the fact, right? You can talk about the strategies. You may even feel badly about how you responded. In order to improve emotion regulation, we have to develop skills. That means we have to work on your ability to sustain your attention to the entire situation. We have to work on processing speed so that you're processing all of that information. We have to work on impulse control so that you're not just impulsively responding with that first emotion that comes to mind. We have to work on mindfulness so that you're able to stay in the present moment and not let that internal dialogue derail you. We also have to work on working memory so that you can think about prior experiences and better evaluate what the best response is, or think about those strategies you have in your toolbox and utilize them. So you don't think about it, but in the heat of the moment, you need to have those foundational skills. So you can break down any mental process within executive function, and these are the foundational skills required for strong executive function. So every time you do a play attention session, you're not only developing cognitive control in all of these areas, but you're strengthening executive function. So these are some of the cognitive skills that can be incorporated into your plan. The first six are our core modules, and those come standard in the plans. So attention stamina, we all need that. That's your ability to direct and sustain your attention to low stimuli at will. Visual tracking, that's a great one if the teacher's ever said, he does great when I stand right next to him, but as soon as I walk away, he's out the window and out the door, and then he has that diffused attention. So we work on staying focused and visually tracking. Task completion. This is for all of us. Being able to start a task right away, keep our attention just on that task until completion, closed end tasking. So a 15-minute homework assignment takes 15 minutes and not 2 hours. Or if you are an adult and you find yourself saying, I start a million things, I finish nothing. That's going to be a good one for you. Short-term memory is the ability to remember dates, names, facts, Filtering distractions, another really important area because we know it's not a deficit of attention, right? No one has a complete deficit of attention. That's a misnomer. It's really that you have great attention. The problem is you're paying attention to bits and pieces of everything. So we want to teach you how to stay focused to what's important and filter out all of that unnecessary stimuli. An academic bridge, you may have seen that on my main screen. Academic bridge is encouraging that transfer and generalization even more. So this is where we can actually ask you to do real office work or real homework while connected to the body wave armband. So you see my client here, he has that body wave armband on, but he's not doing one of our modules. He's actually using the body wave armband while he's doing his coursework. And as long as he's paying attention to his course, and it can be reading, it could be math, it could be writing your report, it could be paperwork that you have to do. He's hearing from the computer, good, great. If he starts to drift, he'll hear focus, and then he knows he's not in that state he needs to be in order to process and complete. So no more mom and dad standing over your child saying, get back on track, get back on track. Or you, when you're working and you think, I've been working on this one email for 25 minutes. Where has my mind been? You're going to learn how to apply this level of attention while actually doing your real work. Okay, really powerful. And that's all part of your program. Then we have masterclass modules that we can pick and choose at any time. And those include working memory, which probably many of you want to incorporate, auditory processing, the ability to follow through with multiple step and verbal instructions, hand-eye coordination, social skills, being able to pick up on those social cues, spatial memory, remembering where things are located. We have mental math for first graders and second graders, mindfulness that we talked about earlier, and motor skills. So you see that there are a variety of skills. And again, the reason we work on all of these different cognitive skills is because if we break down any of those mental processes within the executive function wheel that I showed earlier, these are the cognitive skills required for executive function. You cannot strengthen executive function without developing these core skills. Okay. Now, if you're wondering, I know a lot of you here today may have gone through assessments already. And you may think, oh, check the boxes, I need all of them, or I need 6 of those. You already may know what cognitive skills you would like to work on, or what your clients need, or your child. But if you have a question of what would your program look like, if you haven't already taken our online ADHD test, you may have already taken it. But if you take that test, you will automatically get a full report, and that will pinpoint the different cognitive skills that we just talked about and tell you what your customized plan would look like. So if you want a link, a direct link, so you can see what your customized plan would look like, or what we would recommend for your plan, you can type in test, and I'll make certain you get that link. It'll be in our upcoming emails. And then just click that link and answer it for yourself, or your partner, or your child. You can fill out multiple ones, but that really gives us a good starting point, because then we can further narrow down what's most important for you. Now, if you already have gone through assessments, your focus coach can use the assessment information that you already have, and we can use that information, because I know many of you have, a 20-page neuropsych evaluation, and you say, I have 20 pages of information, but now what do I do? How do I improve these areas they're citing? And we can use that to help customize your plan. Also, if you do want to get a further look at your attentional control, we do have the focus assessment, which is a norm reference test of attentional control. It takes 20 minutes, it's computer based, and that will give us a really good overview of your attentional control in 4 different areas. We look at consistency, performance, impulse control, and your ability to deal with distractors, both auditory and visual. So just know that we are going to be documenting progress all the way through. We'll get that starting point, customize your plan, and we'll be customizing your program as we proceed through the learning process. So let's just summarize what your play attention program will look like. First, you'll have a full support team behind you. I've talked a lot about the technology and how amazing it is, but it's important that we have a supportive team behind you as well. So you're going to meet with your tech advisor, you're going to meet with your focus coach, and your focus coach is going to be critical to your program, because this individual is going to take you through an onboarding to make certain that you're real comfortable with everything before you get started. And then you can think about that person as your accountability buddy. They're going to say, how am I going to keep you on track, Larissa? Is it a Zoom meeting once a week for 15 minutes? Is it a text message multiple times a week? Is it an email? How do we help you stay on track? Think of that focus coach as your accountability buddy to help you every step of the way. You need that person to step in and be that third party cheerleader for your child. So it's not just coming from mom and dad. That's what that person is there for. So you can also, then once they take you through that onboarding, you want to train weekly. If you're in a professional setting, most of our professionals do 2 30-minute sessions. So they work with their clients twice a week for about 30-minute blocks of time. We do recommend that you accumulate about an hour of training per week. If you're a home client and you want to break that up, you could do 6 10-minute sessions. You could do 4 15-minute sessions. A lot of our clients tend to do the 4 15 minutes. If you're doing that, that means when you log in, Sheer Genius will give you 3 different exercises for that day based on your previous performance. So you log in, Sheer Genius will say, okay, Louise, today we're going to work on attention stamina, time on task, and social skills. Not only that, but you have your mini goal. So you log in, you do your 3 exercises, you log out, there's a journal, what I did well, what I'm proud of, and then you're done. The next day, you log in, 3 new exercises, 3 new mini goals, log out, journal, done. That's kind of the process you're going to get into. And you're going to start to see good results after a couple of weeks. I mean, not a couple of weeks, I'm sorry. You're going to see that transfer and generalization after about 6 weeks of consistent training. That's average. And you'll start noticing that you are more productive. You're not as anxious, that your memory is better. So you're going to start noticing these small steps of improvement. But the research shows in order to gain permanency, in order for us to know that not only will you have these skills now, but you'll have them throughout your lifetime, that usually takes about 40 hours total. So around that 40-hour mark, so if you're planning to start now, I would plan on about 10 months of consistent training to get that 40 hours if you're working an hour per week. Around that 40 hours, we're going to be looking at, has everything transferred and generalized? Are you at that advanced skill option? If everything looks good, then we'll start graduating from the program. If it looks like there's more work to be done, we simply customize the plan and we keep going. So what's important to remember is that no matter what, whether it takes 10 months or 16 months, we continue to work as long as necessary. And even once you graduate the program, if you want to continue using it for peak performance, remember we have that challenge algorithm. So you can always continue using it for peak performance training. Your support is always there. Okay. So now that's important to keep in mind for your outcomes. Remember, you all talked about those specific goals you had that you wanted to reach at the end of your play attention program. And so, in order to get those good results, keep in touch with your support team, make certain you have that consistent training in place. You'll start to see good results after about 6 weeks, but in order to gain that permanency, we're going to be looking at about 40 hours total in order to gain that lifelong change that you want. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 different programs available. One is the home program. That comes standard with a user license for 2 family members, because as we mentioned, you can train as a family. If you want to upgrade that user license and you're working from home, you can easily upgrade your user license for $50 per additional user. And so you can work with 4 family members, 5 family members, whatever's best for you, but it comes standard with 2. The professional system, the only difference between the two is the user license. So the professional system comes with an unlimited user license. So you can enroll as many clients into your program that you need to. So if you're thinking, I have 25 clients I need to enroll tomorrow, you can do that. The home system is a one-time fee, which is $18.95. I know we have a lot of individuals outside the US. That is US funds. The professional system is a one-time fee, which is $25.95. Remember, both of those systems come with everything you need. You have your cognitive skill training, your body wave technology, which we ship to you, your neurocognitive training plan, your unlimited support with your focus coach. If you have an FSA or an HSA, those typically do cover. And also, we do have payment plans in our shop as well, if you wanted to check out Shop Pay and see what those payment plan options are. So again, but remember, that's a one-time fee. So whether it takes 10 months, 16 months, you don't have to have any other additional costs associated with your program. And we continue working with you as long as necessary. Thank you so much, everyone. I look forward to meeting with you in a consultation or helping you get started. Take care.